Okay, this is George Topalidis with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program, Black Faculty and Staff Recruitment and Retention Oral History Project at UF. I'm joined this morning by Dr. David Fakunle. I would like to welcome him and thank him for taking time out of his busy schedule to join us. I'm also joined by my colleague, Deon Winchester, for this interview, who represents the grant committee. So to begin, Dr. Fakunle, where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born and raised and still live in Baltimore, Maryland.
Can you share some experiences from your formative years that made you feel a sense of inclusiveness and belonging?
Certainly growing up around my history as a person of color, as a Black person, as a person of the African diaspora, was the formation of who I am. So I guess in a way I wasn't worried about being included. I was more focused on being myself. So the National Great Blacks and Whites Museum, which is based in Baltimore, Maryland, was the cultural and historic institution that really formed who I am. And I say that proudly. It was founded by my godparents, so I was connected to the museum even before birth. And being able to grow up in that institution with a true recollection of Black history, from the kings, queens, and pharaohs of ancient Africa to the transatlantic slave trade, the Ma'afa, to enslavement in the New World, to all of the ingenuity and imagination of Black people in the United States and beyond. I grew up around that. So true history was never out of reach. It was right at my doorstep. So that is what I think the singular set of experiences that helped form who I am, and all the things that I've done culturally really branch off from the museum. So being a storyteller, being a drummer, being in theater, all of my artistic and cultural abilities came from that space. So it was always with the grounding of true Black history. So as I started to navigate white spaces beginning in 6th grade, of course there was transition because I'd never been around white people before middle school. And now being the numerical minority as well as the cultural minority in my predominantly white school took some transition, and I had those moments of like, okay, do I need to assimilate to fit in? Do I need to disregard certain aspects of who I am? Who exactly am I? So even those questions of who I am came up despite my upbringing, and I think that's natural. So it just so happens that it happened at a predominantly white institution. But ultimately, I was reminded of who I am. That never went away. It was just, do I embrace it? Do I accept it? And ultimately, yes, I did. So that is kind of how I have navigated being included. Everyone wants to be included, sure, because everybody wants to have friends and family and just people who care about them. But what does that look like? Are you included as your true self, or do you have to acquiesce in order to be included? So my formative years in middle and high school were really navigating that question. Can I be included being myself? Yes, the answer is yes. And eventually I figured that out. And that confidence and growth carried me to other predominantly white institutions like University of Maryland, where I got my undergrad, and Johns Hopkins, where I got my PhD. So by the time I got to Hopkins, I didn't care. And I'm not cared about being included. It's more so you will find out who I am, and you can either like it or not like it. And I was prepared for that fight at a place like Hopkins. It's the epitome of the ivory tower, trust me. But they embraced me. They cultivated me, and that's why I'm still there too, as well as the University of Florida as faculty, because I was able to be my authentic, genuine self and be included. And really it's about me now being in a position to include others, and that goes beyond race. It just means through my work, I want people to know that they can be their genuine selves and be successful in the academy, because my life will serve as a living example.
Okay. Thank you for your reply. Did you experience any prejudice or discrimination during your formative years in your neighborhood, grade school, or high school?
No. So I grew up in a Black neighborhood in a Black city, so I really wasn't dealing with a lot of white people. It didn't happen until Friends, where, again, I started to have to interact with people outside of my race. Any explicit acts of prejudice or discrimination, no. They were subtle, and I didn't realize that until after the fact. So the whole thing about microaggressions, we weren't talking about microaggressions in the early 2000s. You see what I'm saying? So the whole, the big thing for me was people love my hair. They love my afro. They love my cornrows, and I didn't see it as racially prejudiced. I get it now. I can understand how somebody may interpret it that way in terms of being objectified and things of that matter. For me, it was like, cool, I got attention. People like my hair, hey, okay, touch it. I think my personality is more so, I realize that I introduce people to a perspective not of their own in many cases. And as opposed to being adversarial about it, I welcome that. I welcome the exploration. Now, if it becomes exploitive, then we got a problem. But we were kids. So, like, what was a white kid going to do to me? You know what I mean? That was going to really exploit me. No, it was like they were curious about my hair. I let them touch it. We probably did some stupid things that I wouldn't do now, but you know what? I was a kid. So, I really don't put too much thought in it beyond just being stupid kids. But in terms of any explicit racial prejudice, no, there were things that happened that were racially prejudiced that, fortunately, at my school, we were actually brave enough to talk about. So I remember an incident when someone wrote, I think it was either a swastika or wrote KKK on the bathroom stall. And we ended up having a school-wide conversation about it. That was my senior year of high school, and I remember basically threatening the person who did it in public in front of teachers, students, and administrators, and I was applauded. So I don't know how to take that, but I think it was more so that they maybe unconsciously or consciously they understood my anger, even though it wasn't directed directly to me, but it was obviously a symbol of hate and prejudice for which black people, I think, have suffered among the worst of it. So, yeah, I took it personally, and I expressed my anger, and I expressed, just my anger at that. But beyond high school, no, I don't think anyone's dumb enough to be racist to me, not at least explicitly. I'm a big black guy with long hair and a beard. Usually they say stay away from people like me. So I was like, I used that stereotype to my advantage.
Okay. When would you say you were first aware of your race?
I've always been aware of my race because I was taught to be aware of my race, but I was taught what it actually meant to be black, not what white power wanted me to believe black was about. And I know that made all the difference in my life. There are a lot of people of color, who don't realize who they are and what it means to be black, to be indigenous, to be Latinx, to be any of those things until much later in life. Yes, it makes a difference whenever they find out. But for me to be born and raised with that knowledge, true history, true understanding, that was the protectant against a lot of, I think, racial discrimination, racial prejudice, all of that kind of stuff. So if you were trying to go subtle with me, it wasn't going to work. I'm like, I don't have time for that. I know who I am, so you can't convince me otherwise. I think if I think of explicit moments that just kind of give me the reminder that, yes, you may know who you are, but there are people that couldn't care less or can mitigate my humanity as a person, it would be when I was an adult in my 20s. And I was chilling in my car waiting for a rehearsal to begin. This was in West Baltimore. And it was outside of a church, which is our rehearsal space. And all of a sudden, and I have a black Nissan. So I didn't think it was that conspicuous a car. But all of a sudden, these police cars rolled up and pretty much surrounded my car. And I parked, mind you, and legally parked in a space. All these cars surround me. There's white light. I can barely see. I'm discombobulated. I don't know what the hell's going on. All of a sudden, a white officer walks up to my car. I roll down the window. He asked me, what are you doing? And I say, I'm waiting for a rehearsal. And he said, okay. And this is the part that I think shook me more than I realized then. And the more I recollect it, it still shakes me. He said, next time, make sure we can see your hands. So he's basically giving me a warning. It's like, look, because I was discombobulated, so I wasn't thinking about making my hands available. I was like, what the hell's going on? But if any of those cops had a bad day, if any of those cops were bringing a certain prejudice to them, they could have lit my car up, killed me on the spot, and said it was my fault. You see what I'm saying? So that was the reminder, like, shit, I'm still black. Yeah, okay. Right, you know, that was the reminder, like, yep, I'm black in the United States of America, because there was nothing, and I couldn't tell the story if it had gone wrong. I could have told everybody what happened, but if they lit my car up, as they've done with so many people of color, I would have never been able to tell the story, and Lord knows what they would have said, and they would have probably gotten away with it. And, you know, my family would have been without their son, their father, their husband, all this kind of stuff. The world would have been deprived of everything that I'm looking to bring in, simply because in that moment they saw me as a threat, although I was doing nothing that was threatening. So the fact that the guy gave me a warning, I appreciated it, because, again, it could have gone sideways. It didn't. I'm grateful for that. But the fact that, you know, he told me that, is like, this is your way of staying out of trouble with us. You know what I mean? Keep your hands where we can see it. It was like, damn. Yeah, this shit is real. So that was the biggest reminder of being black in this country for me.
Wow. The next question I have for you is, what made you decide to attend college? Who encouraged you to do so? Would you say that there were any black mentors that sort of led you in that experience towards college?
Both my parents have master's degrees. So it was an expectation that I would go to college, me and my sister. There was no choice. It was like, you're going to do it. The choice for us was grad school. I'll say that. Now, I grew up around, obviously, my parents had master's degrees. My godparents were both PhDs. My godfather, Dr. Elmer Martin, was a professor of social work at Morgan State University in Baltimore. My godmother, Dr. Joanne Martin, was a professor, I think a professor of education, yeah, at Coppin State University in Baltimore. I grew around black intellectuals. Education was not a given. I don't want to put it that way, because, of course, it's a privilege in the grand scheme of things. But for my path and the path of my sister, it was the expectation. We were smart kids who were raised around smart people who were allowed to cultivate our intelligence, not just our academic intelligence, but our artistic, our cultural, our athletic intelligence. College was the expectation. Grad school was our choice. You know, our parents said you have to do better than us. Well, if they both got masters, that doesn't leave many options. So that's either law school, medical school, or getting a PhD. So for me, my choice of getting a PhD was really because of the path that I took in life. Before my senior year of undergrad at Maryland, I participated in a research program called Project Learn. This is based out of Rutgers in New Jersey. And it was particularly attuned to students of color and encouraging them to get into social science research. So before then, I didn't care at all for research. I thought it was for nerds and dorks, and that wasn't me. I took a class that was led by a Latina woman who was in grad school. She was getting her PhD at the time. She and I struck up a good connection as, teacher-student. I was always in the front of a class, did very well. And when I was looking for something to do that summer, because I didn't want to work like my typical job, I started getting all these different advertisements for research programs, summer programs. I specifically remember the one for the University of Miami, and I'm thinking, hell yeah, I want to go to Miami for a summer. So now I'm thinking, okay, I got to get letters of recommendation. Who am I going to go to? My first thought is, okay, whose class did I do well in, and which teachers remember me? I immediately thought about my developmental psychology course. The teacher reached out to her and said, hey, I'm looking to do this research program. Would you be willing to do a letter of recommendation? She said, sure, on the condition that you consider Project Learn, which is what she did when she was undergrad. So I considered it, had the interview, and immediately connected with a professor of social work there. See how it all comes together, these professors of social work. They get me, I guess. It was a big white guy from the Midwest, Dr. Andrew Peterson. He's still at Rutgers in social work. And he and I just vibed. Big white guy, this, black kid from Baltimore. We just hit it off. And he was the first person to make research of any kind relevant to me. So he introduced me to his field, tobacco outlet density. And this was 2008. So tobacco outlet density as a field wasn't more than like several years old when I met Dr. Peterson. And the way he was able to explain the research to me is I saw myself in the research. I was immediately thinking about my neighborhood in East Baltimore, like, that's why there's a bunch of places to buy cigarettes. Okay, this is interesting. I want to do this. So I got accepted, went through an 8-week boot camp of just research methods and approaches, wrote a paper, which became my first published paper in 2010, and that was the spark. I said, okay, I want to do research. I want to do social science research. I want to think about Baltimore. I want to think about my life. How the hell did I get here? Because everything suggests I shouldn't be here. There's got to be more to it than just the luck of the draw. So after I graduated Maryland, I spent a few years working because I wasn't ready for grad school. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And one of the biggest lessons I learned at Project Learn was if you're not ready for grad school, don't go. So I didn't go. Worked for a few years, was talking with a bunch of professors and researchers, and it wasn't until I met Dr. Deborah Holden, who was at Johns Hopkins at that time, a black woman. She said, this is what you need to do. You need to get a PhD in public health, and you need to get a master's in social work. So all the other people that I talked to said, you could do this, you could do social work, you could do community psychology, you could do community clinical psychology, you could do urban planning. So they gave me all these options. I didn't need options. That was my problem. I needed somebody to tell me what to do. Dr. Holden told me what I needed to do, so that's why I chose public health. And that's why I chose, I looked at Hopkins. It made sense. It was in my backyard. And she was my champion. So she helped me to, get to Hopkins, and that's where I did my PhD.
Hello, Dr. Fakunle.
Yes.
This is Deon. You said you did your undergrad at Maryland. What was that like attending? Traditionally, coming from your neighborhood, coming from your community. What was that like going to that traditionally white institution, and where did you find your sense of community?
So I chose Maryland initially because of aerospace engineering. That's what I wanted to do before I realized I wasn't good at that. When I got to Maryland, I was already used to white folks because I spent the last 7 years at Friends, which is a predominantly white private institution in Baltimore. So my introduction to white folks in the academic setting already got that. So Maryland was just a bigger place to be. What I liked about it was that it was far enough separated from Baltimore. So it's about 45 minutes away from Baltimore. It's closer to DC. It's far enough separated from Baltimore that I could live my own life, start my independence, as they say, with college. But if I ever needed to go home, 45 minutes, I'm home. That was the perfect balance for me. While at Maryland, I joined an a cappella group, a male a cappella group, the Generics, and they became basically my fraternity. So I always knew I had that social network within my a cappella group. And then I just picked up friends along the way. I started at a dorm that was meant to be like the international dorm. So people all around the world, I specifically remember my friends from Japan. There were so many other cultures that were represented. So it was called Global Communities, and the program is still around. So I was in a space where diversity and inclusion was appreciated, at least in this one dorm. I can't speak for all the dorms in Maryland, but at least in this one place, hey, you saw all hues of the rainbow in that dorm. So that's what I guess grew up around at Maryland. Because it's so big, you can find your niche. It's a huge school. It's got like 30, 40,000 students. So everybody kind of can find their scene. And that's what I did. So sense of self was never an issue for me. Like I said, I always had my friends and my networks, and I always had home right there. So it really was just a time for me to explore myself, who I thought I was, who I could be, and just live. But in terms of being included, yeah, I was always included.
Indeed. And how did you deal with any instances of prejudice, microaggressions during your times at college?
Well, I can't say I remember too many of them, but I'm gonna guess if there was anything that was explicit, I hit it head on. I'm not the biggest fan of confrontation. That's just not my style. I'm very laid back. I try to be understanding, and that certainly served me well as I've gotten older. And again, if there were any instances I don't remember, which means it wasn't that serious. Like I don't remember any fights. I don't remember have to go into any administration or anything like that. So, yeah. Yeah, you got me looking back. I'm thinking.
So
So the biggest incident, so I would say the biggest incident that happened on campus while I was there was a noose that was found hanging from a tree close to the student union, but actually a little closer to the offices where the black student union was. So that was probably the biggest racial scandal that we had while I was there. And of course, it made the rounds and everybody had conversations about it. And I'm sure I said my words too. But again, that wasn't directed to me personally. It was just obviously a form of terror, I think, a form of demonstration of some perceived superiority on one end and inferiority on the other. But in terms of anyone coming to me with that, yeah, nobody was that stupid.
you know, Dr. Fakunle, I was on your Discover Me, Rediscover Me page, and was listening to some of your YouTube conversations. And in one, you mentioned that university bubble, right?
Yep.
Now, I'm interested in, you talk about that balance between, okay, the community, coming from the community, research about the community. Talk about leaving, as you say, the safety and comfort of campus and seeing that community and being involved in the community. Could you talk about that?
Sure. So that conversation was at Hopkins, and that was really attuned to the students at Hopkins, because one of the prevailing narratives at Johns Hopkins is stay on campus, don't go into Baltimore. It's a jungle out there, so you can take all the racial implications from that. And being from Baltimore and being at this institution that's essentially telling the students don't venture outside of the campus is BS. I'll keep my language clean as much as possible. So that was a platform for me to really encourage the students, and a lot of students want. That's the thing I learned too, being at Hopkins as a TA and as a faculty member. They come to Baltimore not just because of Hopkins, but they know there's something there. So it's called a reason. There's a je ne sais quoi about Baltimore that has attracted a lot of people to it. And the students really wanted to explore that, but they were scared. They were scared by their own institution. Don't go off campus. So it was like my responsibility as someone from Baltimore to say Baltimore's not all that bad, but in the grand scheme of things, you have to discover the story for yourself. Don't let the higher ups who probably haven't set foot in Baltimore and Lord knows how long tell you about Baltimore. You tell them about Baltimore. I'll tell them about Baltimore because I live here, and I would say the same thing for the University of Florida. I'm sure there's a lot of dynamics like that with institutions. It's like, okay, stay on the University of Florida campus, don't go into Gainesville. Don't stay on the campus of the University of Notre Dame. Don't go into South Bend, Indiana. Just choose the university, choose a city, and they'll probably say don't go out into the city. And so much of that narrative of what the city is, in a large part, is driven by that institution itself. So Johns Hopkins has a hell of a history when it comes to the city of Baltimore, and a lot of it ain't good. So it's very hypocritical for them to say don't go into the city that we in part screwed up. You know what I mean? And maybe it's a similar situation with Florida. It's like don't go into Gainesville, the city that we kind of screwed up in a way. So for me, college and grad school is about growth. It's about expanding your perspectives on the world and how it works. And that shouldn't just be in the classroom. That should be very experiential as well. So many of the lessons that we learn in life don't happen in the classroom. They happen in the world. So why deprive our students of that opportunity in their current world? And their current world is that institution and the city in which it's held. That's the other part. So it's not just Johns Hopkins. It's Johns Hopkins and Baltimore. It's not just the University of Florida. It's the University of Florida and Gainesville. So for me, that was just a golden opportunity to make that statement explicitly and clear. And, in the several years since that happened, I think a lot of people have resonated with that message. And I think a lot of the students have been very proactive and being about Baltimore. And that's what I told him. It's like, while you're here, you're a resident of Baltimore City. Act like it. While you're at the University of Florida, you're a resident of Gainesville. Act like it. You aren't above a damn person in this city and in this town. You are just like them. Act like it. Treat it with respect. Treat them with respect. So I hope that someone listened to what I had to say. I like to believe somebody did. And if it made their experience that much more fuller at Florida, at Johns Hopkins, wherever, then great.
We hear you, man. We hear you. Tell me, I got another question. Baltimore, Maryland has a lot of great HBCUs. I almost attended Morgan State, if they'd offered me a full ride. Mm-hmm. But can you talk about that dynamic, the HBCUs, and have you considered working at an HBCU?
Yeah, so both my parents went to Morgan State. I've done the math. I'm pretty sure I was conceived at Morgan State. So Morgan State is in my blood. Dr. Elma Martin was a professor of social work at Morgan State. My introduction to storytelling was because of listening to a radio show out of Morgan State. I did my postdoctoral fellowship at Morgan State. So you see how Morgan State is really a part of my life, right? You know what I mean? And I want to work at Morgan. It just so happened that the pandemic happened, so obviously all the professorships dried up because I lost a lot of money. But it's still my hope to be in an official capacity at Morgan, because not just because of the history that I have with it in my family, but in my career, that's really where the kickstart happened. During my postdoc at Morgan, I got the chance to work on a project where I could explicitly use storytelling as my research modality. I wasn't doing that at Hopkins, all right? You know what I mean? I wasn't doing that at a place like Hopkins. But I was able to do it at Morgan because Morgan, the culture allowed me to explore that. So when it comes to issues of race and racism and just how we navigate inequities and inequalities, Morgan is not on step 1. They're on step 4. People get it. So you didn't have to have that conversation like you had to have at a Hopkins or Florida. Let's just get to the work and see what happens. So with this particular project, I was working in Southwest Baltimore in 3 neighborhoods, and it was in conjunction with a public health initiative led by Kaiser Permanente. So Kaiser came into Baltimore and was dropping millions of dollars on public health initiatives. Like everywhere you went, there was some Kaiser stuff happening in the city. So this particular project was focused on Southwest Baltimore, 3 neighborhoods that had among the worst health disparities, not just in the city, but the state of Maryland. So looking to address education, economic inequality, public safety, mental health, on and on and on and on. My particular project was to get a sense of how residents knew about the initiative and what their thoughts were. Because of a place like Morgan, and particularly my mentor, Dr. Kim Sidnor, who was the dean of the School of Community Health and Policy at Morgan, she allowed me to explore and to be creative and imaginative. She encouraged it. She got it, most importantly. She got what I was trying to do. And I think that's probably the biggest hurdle when you want to be creative in just science, period. Someone has to get it. If nobody gets it, it's going to be hard to get a chance to prove it. But she got it, which was all I needed. So I was able to go with this project, all the bumps and bruises that go with trying something new. And it worked out well. And I was able to parlay that into other opportunities. And at the same time, I get connected, and I'm sure this question will come up, but I got connected with Jill Sankey at the Center for Arts and Medicine in Florida while I was at my postdoc in Morgan. So that's where that through line came from. So for me, I realized that in my career and what I do, I can work anywhere, especially when you're virtual. That's why I'm working at Florida now. You know what I mean? So I can manage these different institutions and bring what I bring to each of them in different ways. And so I don't say allegiance, but in a way, my allegiance is to Morgan because of how much it means to me and my family and how it really led to who I am today. So when the opportunity comes, I will be faculty in some form or fashion at Morgan, and I want to stay in Florida, and I want to stay at Johns Hopkins.
Dr. Fakunle, you mentioned Florida, and I think it would be a great segue really into the next question, which is what motivated you to become employed at UF?
They asked me to. That's it. They asked me to, and I said, okay. So let me tell that story. All right. So as I mentioned before, I got connected with Jill Psaki through a fellow storyteller. And, simple email saying, hey, this guy's doing great work around storytelling and public health. You should talk to him. So I talked to Jill Psaki, and you said, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm about. She said, oh, you would be great. No, it didn't happen that time. So we said, oh, we should stay in touch. So I was like, okay, that's cool. I'll take that. Stay in touch. I happened to run into Jill again at APHA, so the American Public Health Association conference in 2018. This is the first time we meet in person. Didn't know we were going to be there. We just happened to run into each other. So that kind of sealed the deal. It's like, okay, this guy's cool. He needs to work with us. We're doing this project called Creating Healthy Communities. It's this national level initiative looking at the intersection of arts, culture, public health, infrastructure, you name it, it's in there. Would you be willing to come to the next session, which happened to be in DC? I'm like, absolutely. So I go to DC. This is early 2019, so still in my postdoc at Morgan. And, all these different artists and administrators and researchers and, everything, but they're all united around the idea that arts and culture can improve health and well-being. And I'm like, I dig that, because I've been doing it with Discover Me, Recover Me, as you saw, Deon. That's storytelling as a healing practice. So it's very explicit use of arts and culture for a health purpose. So, I get a chance to speak. I run my mouth. They love what I say. Great. After a while, Jill reaches back out to me after the sessions in D.C. and said, hey, would you be willing to come to Gainesville and help write the white paper about this initiative? It's like, we'll fly you, all that kind of stuff. So it's like, oh, we'll take care of you. Cool. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? So I go to Gainesville for about a week. I meet with all these different experts just all across the country. So she's bringing together this dream team of people. And I'm like, I'm just the I'm just the postdoc storyteller. Like, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? These are all like grown-ass people. You see what I'm saying? Who've been doing this work for years. Here comes this kid, relatively speaking, who just happened to run his mouth at this session, and now I'm getting pushed to do this white paper. So I struggled a little bit, just figuring out, like, what's my voice going to be in this space? Because in a lot of ways, I'm the novice. Like, I'm just a happy to be here person, you know what I mean? But I eventually found my voice in the white paper. It's on the Center for Arts and Medicine website. I put together a story that I felt captured the essence of what the initiative was all about. So I'm very happy about that. It got published, people have seen it, blah, 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 blah. Jill reaches out to me maybe a few months after that and said, hey, maybe not a few months, because that was still 2019. So this is 2020. Yeah, 2020, pandemic's happening. I don't know what the hell I'm doing with my life, because it was just a bunch of just mess. Jill reaches out to me again and say, hey, would you be interested in teaching a class at Florida? And I said, absolutely. I'm like, it's just like manna from heaven right now. So I become adjunct faculty, being a part of the graduate seminars that were happening in fall 2020. So that went well, really enjoyed the students. And then she comes back again and says, hey, would you want to teach a full semester course? I said, absolutely. So now I'm teaching the Arts and Public Health Graduate Practicum, and then that's what made me go from adjunct faculty to adjunct assistant professor. So it's all serendipity, and I used to be very ashamed of that. None of what's happened in my career has gone according to any plan. It's happened. So when I tell people, like, how did you become a professor? It's like, it was given to me. Like, I didn't apply. I didn't apply for my postdoc at Morgan. I didn't apply for my professorship at Florida. They were given to me. And all I did was the work. I made myself available. I was open to opportunity, and I showed people, here's what I do, here's why I do it. And I just happened to find this space which is perfect for what I do, called arts and health. I didn't know this scene existed until like 2 years ago. And it's been a whirlwind ever since, because everything makes sense now, with what I do. So that's my Florida story.
Thank you, Dr. Fakunle. I will quote you one more time. You said one thing that resonates with me with what you just said. You said the universe always finds a way to bring back to the gifts that should be at the forefront of your purpose. And I'm thankful that your gifts were able to come to the forefront here at UF. When you were talking about when you started at UF, very often you hear folks talk about that imposter syndrome, or they feel as if I may be in over my head, or maybe I don't belong. And I don't know if I got a touch of that from what you were sharing earlier on, but could you share, how did you overcome that initial feeling that, hey, I am, that you have your gift and it is of value and it is of purpose here?
So I would say by the time I got to UF officially, I got past any, not most of it, I won't say all of it, but most of my imposter syndrome, because that's what that is. And I felt imposter syndrome for the first time really when I was at Hopkins as a grad student, because I'm thinking to myself, I don't belong here. Like, I'm not smart enough, I can't compete, none of that kind of stuff. The answer to it is always support. So my office mate when I was a grad student was the first person to give me that real support when I felt the imposter syndrome. My mentor followed that up. At UF, same thing. The reason I love CAM is because it's so supportive. It feels homely, feels like a family. With Jill especially being the one in charge, she's the leader. I feel most comfortable with her. You know what I mean? So I know I can be honest and be open because she's been honest and open with me. And the vibe that I've always gotten is once she realized that I had something, whatever that something was, is like, we need to cultivate this as much as possible. So she has never been, she has never hesitated to put me in an opportunity to be successful and an opportunity to grow. And that's what I appreciate the most. So even with the class, so the class that I taught this spring was about arts and public health. Mind you, I didn't even know arts and public health was a thing until 2 years ago. And now they're asking me to teach it to other people. So I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to teach them? I'm still learning myself. And I think part of what made me comfortable was that Jill allowed that to be okay. That is like, okay, I'm teaching this course, but I'm still learning right along with you. So you have every capacity to teach me as much as I can teach you. And then the lessons that I was sharing with my students, for as much as it came from maybe the literature, it came from my own experience. So that was my biggest fear, was like, what am I going to teach? Because my frame of reference is just what I've done. Okay, teach that. And just teach the concepts that it touched upon, and to kind of show the through lines that exist within arts and health. I think that's what's so exciting about it, is there's so much that fits within that space that you don't need to tell a person, do this or do that. It's like, okay, here are the main concepts and theories and all that kind of stuff that you need to be aware of. And now take your art form or your cultural practice and find how it navigates those concepts and principles. Now, for me, it's storytelling. That's how I teach. It's through storytelling and with storytelling. So that was just the best way for me to convey whatever knowledge I had about arts and health, was through the arts and health that I've done. And it worked. The students enjoyed the class. They learned, they grew, and they appreciated it. And they told me that. And that's all I needed. Like, okay, if the students got something out of it and if they appreciate it, then I'm going to just keep doing that. So it really helped me to be comfortable. Their support, the support of students and the support of faculty, as well as Jill, just the support to, like, you can do this your way. It's okay. That's exactly what they need. So that's the permission, quote unquote, that I needed, and I just ran with it.
Seems like you had for it being mostly virtual, it seems like you've had a great experience at UF. Have you had any instances of microaggressions, any discriminations? I mean, I know that most of your contact is virtual, but.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I haven't. Most of any discussions around race have just been about how CAM wants to address the history and the legacy of race and racism not just within arts and health, but I think within UF as well. That was like the big conversation we had maybe a couple weeks ago. I won't go into any details, but yeah, and me personally, no, and I think it helped that, yeah, I'm virtual, so like, if I'm not on a Zoom, like, how you gonna be racist to, you know, that's a quick act. So, but no, I don't think anyone's tried. I'll put it that way. No one's tried to be discriminatory or prejudiced against me. And I'll say because they don't want to, you know, not because of any fear of you know, retribution. I think they generally don't want to. They appreciate me being there. They always seem to be happy when I'm on camera. When I say stuff. So I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. And one thing that's helped me when it comes to issues of race and racism is learned behavior. It's a learned culture. So no one is born, like they say, you see all the memes and stuff, no one's born racist. Like, you know, you have white kids and black kids hugging and holding. Yeah, because we want to see each other's humanity. It's the cultural and societal stuff that muddies that up. And in many cases, those who may exude any type of prejudice, whether it's race, sex, orientation, religion, you name it, is because they were taught to. They don't really have a legitimate reason why they do it. It was just what they know. Like, oh, that's what my daddy did. That's what my granddaddy did. It's like, yeah, that's usually the reason. You know what I mean? That's just what you know. So when people are introduced, so that's why I understand particularly black people who don't want to do that. Like, it is not my job to help fix my oppressor. I get that. For me, I choose to take the perspective of this may be the one and only chance that they get introduced to a perspective not of their own, and I don't want to be the reason they don't know. Now, if they choose to be racially prejudiced after me, okay, you made your choice, and we'll act appropriately. But at least in the moment that they connect with me, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and all I'm going to do is be my genuine self. And if they can see that, then they'll be like, oh, well, him being black doesn't make much of a difference. Yeah, you're right. Welcome to the real, welcome to the world. It shouldn't make a difference. I think we just want nice people in our lives. And for me, as much as I can help it, I want to be nice. I want to be helpful. I want to be generous. I want to be understanding, because that helps people realize just how stupid racism is. It's not even about how devastating and traumatic. It's just stupid. It makes no sense, especially from my perspective. And I think that's the other thing that helps. It's like, look, anybody who wants to be prejudiced against me, you really want to stack up like accomplishments in life and like where we are. Like, no one wants to play that game with me. And well, because I can list all the things I've done. And oh, by the way, I'm only 34. I could die right now and my legacy is set. And I think I live with that confidence. It's like, I hope I'm here for a very long time, trust me. But if anything were to happen to me, heaven forbid, I am confident and I'm content with the impact that I made on the world. And I don't have to tell my story. The world will tell my story, and I'm confident in the story that the world will tell. They will not sully my name, because there's nothing to sully. So if you want to play the accomplishment game, I'll play it. You're not going to be happy with the results. So there's really no point in being prejudiced against me. I don't want to do that. I just want to live my life. I want to be happy. And part of being happy is making other people happy within reason. And just kind of exuding happiness and peace and understanding. So that's the way I tend to operate regardless. And if it helps a person to realize that, again, their prejudiced views have served them no purpose, then I'll take that.
Tell me something. With all of that said, well, let me back up a bit. Could you compare your experience, limited though it may be, at UF, whether it be the onboarding process or how they welcomed you? Could you compare that to some of the prior institutions you've been at, Hopkins, Maryland, and is there anything that we UF can do to pull you away from Morgan State?
I would say, so my career is interesting. I call myself a mercenary because I just happen to live a mercenary's life. You give me an assignment, you pay me, I do it. I don't like being locked down at any one place because I have a short attention span. So that's something I've had my whole life. But I realize that I'm needed at many places. And I want to be in many places. So for me, it's not an either or, it's an and. I'm already at Florida. I'm on the books at Florida. The only thing that would change is if I do more at Florida. And leave it to Jill Sankey, I probably will end up doing more at Florida. I would like being a full professor. Adjunct ain't that big of a deal, but it's still something. My work is just, based on the projects that are there. So if I'm teaching classes, okay, cool. If I'm doing any type of workshops or any type of facilitation, cool, I'm there. Just give me more gigs. That's all it takes. You know what I mean? I'm an artist at heart, so I'm all about the gig. Okay, you like what you see? Give me some more gigs. Like that's all it takes. I like the people. Like I said, my exposure has been the Center for Arts and Medicine, but I'll be honest. It seems like the whole University of Florida is starting to find me out. Like the thing I'm coming down to in Gainesville next month. Out of the blue, I get this email from somebody who's not in the Center for Arts and Medicine, and I know it's because of Jill, because Jill will talk. And she said, "Hey, we would love for you to be a keynote for this undergrad research." I'm like, I didn't even do research in undergrad, but okay. Well, I did. Okay, technically Project Learn was undergrad. I lied. So it's like you said, Deon, the universe continues to confirm that what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing. Why? Because the opportunities continue to present themselves without me really trying. And in a lot of cases, it feels very easy. Like I'm not stressing to teach a class. I'm not stressing to do a workshop. I'm not stressing to provide it's like, this is just who I am. And I can't think of a better thing to tell people than to say, I get paid to be myself. Like my genuine self. Like that's what they want. Like we need David as he is. That. I love it. So if Florida wants more of it, just ask. That's all Jill did, was say, do you want to do this? I say, yeah. In most cases, I'm going to say yes. So I would say overall for faculty of color, they want to know, and if you can tell them this at the onboarding process or even before they say yes to the job, can they be their authentic selves in the institution? And it's a very honest question. Which requires a very honest answer. And that's what Jill, I didn't have to ask the question. I mean, Jill brought me in because she saw the evidence of who I was and decided, yeah, that's what we need in camp. Now, not everybody has that opportunity like I did. So that's why I always have to say my story is not typical. Most people are going to apply for a professorship at UF. They're not going to be given anything from the institution. So that will be their opportunity to ask that question, which I know is going to, in a lot of ways, make or break their satisfaction with the job. It's like, can I be myself? Can I research what I want? Can I approach this the way that I want? Can I bring my culture? Can I bring my genuine nature to this? Or do I have to acquiesce to whatever pedagogy or epistemology or culture that's already here in order to survive? So I think about my mentor, Dr. Furholder. She and I are not on speaking terms anymore. Part of what I've realized in retrospect is that she took me as far as she could in academia. She did it by the books. I'm sure she had to do it by the books to survive in academia as a black woman. I understand that. I didn't understand it then because I was just upset that relationship ended the way that it did. But in the grand scheme of things, she did what she needed to do to survive, and she was damn good at it and still is damn good at it. Me, I kind of rejected it immediately. Like, it's like, who am I as a grad student? Like, you should be lucky to be here. And I'm saying, nope, I don't want to do it this way. And through the bumps and bruises and the heartache and all that kind of stuff, I stuck with that conviction of I want to do this my way because I think there's something there to it. I think there's something to the way that I can navigate academia. And over the past several years, I've been able to demonstrate that. Not because of being hard-headed or not because of being stubborn, but because the opportunities presented themselves. And I think more than anything, people believed in me. So Jill Sankey clearly believed in me. Otherwise, he would not have reached out and say, come to Florida. I think any faculty of color want to know that their institution believes in them. And then by proxy, believes in the work that they do. Hopkins did the same thing. So again, my arts and health career truly began at Hopkins. I don't know how many people can say that, you know what I mean? But it started there because they believed in me. They didn't understand storytelling the way that I did. They didn't know how I was going to actually pull it off, but it's like, you know what? We trust you, and we'll give you the shot. So my first class at Hopkins, my name wasn't even on the class for the first 2 years because I wasn't faculty. So that means another faculty member had to put their name on my class, not knowing what I was going to do in said class, and say, yeah, I trust him to do what he's going to do with this class. And I did, and now my name is on the class because I'm faculty. So it really is about faith. It is about faith and trust in the people that you are bringing in to really elevate the institution. I think that's the other part we got to keep in mind. We as faculty make Florida look good. We as faculty make Hopkins look good. We as faculty make Morgan State look good. Like, you need us and the students. So if they're operating as if this institution doesn't give a damn about them, that's going to reflect in the work. You know what I mean? That's going to reflect in the work, and I think you miss out on a lot if you do that too. Because, yeah, there'll be miserable people who can still do get all the funding, who can still publish all the papers, who can still teach all the classes. But there's just a different level of energy and connection and excitement that you miss if people don't really care about what they're doing. They're just going through the motions. And I saw that at Hopkins. I could tell when people were applying for funding. You could see it in their face, like just how sunken, like the sunken place from Get Out. They were in a sunken place when they were applying for funding. They were that drained of just life. And I said right then and there, like, I don't want that to be me. That sounds like a miserable experience, and I don't want it. So, yeah, I want to be an example that, yes, as a black man in academia, I am successful, I am productive, and most importantly, I'm happy. I'm happy with what I do and how I do it.
Dr. Fakunle, you sort of segued into our next question here by providing your feedback on, recruitment and what ideal recruitment from your perspective really should be. To what extent do you think, what could the administration do to retain Black faculty and staff members?
Respect them, first and foremost. Respect their humanity, respect their epistemology, respect their productivity. Make sure they're paid equal to that of their white counterparts. Don't let them find out some other way that they're getting paid less for the same work, if not more work. Make sure, and this really goes for all faculty, but I'm just speaking to Black faculty, especially because of the inequities that exist. Make sure that they get the resources in order to be successful, because again, there are challenges to being Black in any space, let alone academia. So it's like being, like, the deal. Like, Florida can't tell me it doesn't know the deal, so start addressing the deal. Okay? Start addressing it, because you're not going to get everyone like me who can kind of pick and choose his spots. So I can choose to do a class. I can choose to do this, that, and the third. My life doesn't depend on the money that I get from Florida. Far from it. I'll just put that out there, okay? Most of my money comes from other places. So I can say, I don't want to do that. Not everybody has that flexibility. So make sure that they are properly compensated for all that they're giving to the institution. And make sure that when they've earned it, celebrate them. People like to be celebrated. They like to be appreciated. So I think just knowing that, yes, your science has elevated not just the field, but also this university. You are creating the next generation of scientists, or whatever the case may be, with the classes that you teach. A simple thank you, a simple acknowledgement can go a long, long way. But in the grand scheme of things, pay them the way they should be paid, and give them the resources and assistance that they need. And I would say those faculty members should be overwhelmed with any work, because that's just the quickest way for the productivity and the quality to go down. So if that's the case, hire more people. Like, seriously, hire more people. There are plenty of smart people of color who would love to have a position like this, just as long as they know that they'll be respected and be paid adequately for what they do. So it's not rocket science. It's a choice. It's not about ability, because I'm sure if I look up the books at the University of Florida, I'm like, y'all got some money. Pay your faculty. It's not that hard. It's the same with teachers. It's like, oh, we want to appreciate teachers. Pay them more. That's how you show appreciation. Pay them more, because it's worthy of that, because of all the impact that it has on so many different factors. So that would be my number one thing. Pay them what they should be paid, and make sure that it's equal to their counterparts.
The next question is not really related to, what sort of administration should do. It's kind of switches gears a little bit. But what I wanted to ask you is, in your positions at Johns Hopkins, anywhere else you have taught, and not UF, What level of mentoring are you expected to provide?
I would say there's really no expectations of mentoring. It's just a decision that I personally have made to mentor people, because I know what good mentorship looks like, and I know what bad mentorship looks like. I had both at Hopkins, and they both stuck with me. So any student who asks for my help within my reasoning to do it, I will help them, because I'm not that far. I got my PhD 3 years ago. I ain't that far removed from being a student. So I know I remember how hard it was to get some faculty sometimes to even answer your emails. I know how hard it was to just get a simple question answered, let alone any real help or resource that they can provide. As I continue to grow in academia, grow in resources, grow in, notoriety, power, however you want to put it, I have made my own commitment to being as much of, again, a help to students as I can, because I want them to succeed, and I want them to know that their faculty actually give a damn. You know what I mean? I care. I want them to be successful, and I want them to be happy. So if me doing a prime example, so I had a meeting with someone who reached out to me who's interested in arts and health. It's something that she did in the past, but life took her in another direction. She's at a job that's solid, but she's not feeling satisfied. She's talked to a couple of colleagues, including Jill Psaki, in the past, and kind of had initial conversations, but nothing beyond that. She needs that. I recognize that, because I've been there too, sending a cold emails and hoping somebody responds. What makes the difference is when somebody knows that person and sends the email on your behalf. So for me, that was just a quick way to recognize. It's like, look, I can make the difference in her career and her trajectory, but just by sending an email. That's not hard. That's not hard at all. So I told her I will send an email to both of these people, both of whom I know, and say, talk to this person. Bam. Not a guarantee, but it's a lot better situation than she was in before. So to me, that's the kind of stuff that I mean. It's really the small things like that, just kind of making the connections and cultivating the relationships where your ability allows you to. And I know from experience that can make all the difference in your career and just in your trajectory. So my mentorship is of that. If I can help you, I will help you.
Could you share with us what does it mean to be an effective ally? Especially for or an allyship for Black and other people of color.
Okay, I would say it's about utilizing your power to elevate others. That's what allyship is, especially if you're white. Because if you're white, you got power. You know what I'm saying? You got power. If you want to be an ally, reallocate your power to those that don't have it, simply because of the color of their skin, or simply because they're a woman, or simply because they're not Judeo-Christian, or they're not heteronormative. We can go on and on and on with all these configurations of humanity that because of that configuration, you are less than in society's eyes, which means you don't have as much power. So to those that realize that that's BS, because it is, the best way to counteract that is to reallocate the power. So for my goal in my life, as much as I can do it, because I know there are a lot of things that will not happen in my lifetime, and I've accepted that, I want to do as much as I can to reallocate wealth and reallocate power. So if anyone believes in the humanity of humanity and making sure everyone has as much of a chance to be happy as anybody else, and they know they have the power to do it, do it. And it doesn't have to be anything big. It's just saying that, again, prime example, the email. My power is in that email. I can send that connection to Jill and the other guy and say, talk to this person, and they'll probably listen to me because they know who I am. That's my power right now. And if that's going to make the difference for that person, then I think I was a great ally in that moment. So it doesn't have to be anything huge. If you have the huge opportunity, please take the huge opportunity. But a lot of times it's the little things that add up. So I hope that the email that I send allows this person to be in the space that they want to be. And if they send me a text message or a phone call or email saying, thank you for sending that email because that led to this, that, and the third, and now I'm in a better place and I'm happier with what I'm doing, I've done my job.
You know, that reminds me of the story you tell of with the gems, you know, and the end, you know, saying, you know, the gift of, you know, you giving the gem, not the actual gift of the gem, but the act, you know, that's the gift. And I think that's the alignment with allyship.
Yeah. When I stopped being, I used to be very selfish. I admit that. I used to be very selfish. I would always be very selfish and very transactional. So I wouldn't want to do anything for somebody unless I knew I was getting something back for a long time. When I gave that up and said, I'm just going to give because it's the right thing to do, I'm going to give because it actually makes me happy to give things. So I really don't care. You know, I'll get gifts once in a while, but my wife knows this. I don't really care for gifts. I'm actually happier when I give her something or give my son something than whatever they give me, just because that just giving makes me happy. And I've accepted that. So once I started to do that, I got so much more in return. Not having the pressure of worrying about what I'm getting in return has given me more than I could have ever imagined. And even talking to you all is an example of that. Because I'm at the University of Florida, because of what was given to me, because of what I decided to give without worrying about what I would get in return. So that's the other part I want people to realize, too, when it comes to allyship. It can make you very happy just to give. It will make you feel good. That's health and well-being. You'll feel better simply because you're giving. And then, oh, by the way, you'll likely get so much more in return because of what you've given. You know, there are a bunch of people that I've helped. I may never hear from them again. That's okay. There may be somebody who comes to me 10, 20, 30 years from now and says, because of you, this happened, and here's how I want to show my appreciation. That is what makes life worth it. I think I've made the world a little bit better since I've been here, which means my life was valid and my purpose was validated. So really for me, it's like I'm going to keep doing that because it seems to be a winning formula, and I genuinely enjoy it. And if that can be an example for how other people can live their lives in academia and beyond, then good. I think I've done what I'm supposed to do with the time that I have.
Dr. Fakunle, I wanted to thank you for that reply, and I wanted to kind of finish up here. I don't want to keep you for too long today. I want to be respectful of your time as well. So the last question we have is sort of getting your view on the Black Lives Matter movement. What do you think about the movement? If you could share that with us.
So the movement is simply a declaration that, again, the lives of Black people do matter, because everything in the history of this country has suggested that it doesn't. Like people have said, we wouldn't have to say it if we didn't have to say it. If it was demonstrated, we wouldn't have to say it. So of course, you know, you get the whole all out. No, that's just a reaction to that because they don't want us to say that Black lives matter. So I'm a believer in the movement. I'm a believer in the declaration. I don't have to say it. I'll show you why my life matters. I'll demonstrate that my life matters. And then all I'll say is, oh, did I convince you? Okay, the same respect that you now give me and my humanity, do that for every other Black person that you see. That's it. And they may not have everything that I have, but then look at the circumstances as to why I have it and why they don't. So it's really to, again, look at the whole picture, the 30,000-foot view, as we say. We see this in public health all the time. So we think about so many of the maladaptive behaviors that happen, particularly in communities of color, low-income communities. Tobacco was the thing that I did for a long time. So it's like, why do you see about a bunch of people of color smoking or, you know, engaging in using tobacco? Well, there's nothing but a bunch of tobacco outlets in their neighborhood. There's no green space. There's no quality education. There's no adequate health care. There's all this stuff that goes against health and well-being. But then you give them all this stuff that is specifically bad for health and well-being, because there's nothing good about tobacco and nicotine. We know this. And you wonder why. If I was, and my old mentor said it best, if I was dealing with all the crap of being Black, being indigenous, being Asian, being Latinx, throwing that being a woman if you're a woman, being non-heteronormative if that's your situation, being non-Judeo-Christian in this country, I take drugs too. If you're dealing with that every single day, and it manifests in every aspect of your livelihood. I'd pick up a joint, I'd pick up a crack pipe, I'd shoot some heroin too, to not deal with all the pain and trauma of simply existing the way that I do. So again, we have to say Black Lives Matter because everything so much demonstrates that it doesn't. So it's like you have to speak it into existence. You say it first and then you take the actions to back that up. So I think more people than not are starting to get that because 2020 was a great example, unfortunately, of how Black lives do not matter. We saw lynchings last year. The world saw lynchings last year. Ahmaud Arbery was lynched. George Floyd was lynched, okay? Nothing says Black lives don't matter than being lynched, okay? Like, I know this. I'm on a lynching commission in Maryland. This is what we're talking about. We got our first session on Saturday. So it really is all about showing this country and the world all the evidence, all the data that leads to the conclusion that Black lives do not matter. And now we're saying that will no longer stand. You have 400 years of that, not another year more. So here's how we're going to start by saying it. We're going to say it out loud that Black lives matter. Then we're going to demonstrate that Black lives matter. Then ultimately we have to have the policies, big P and little p, the policies and the programming, big P and little p, that demonstrates that Black lives matter, Indigenous lives matter, Asian lives matter, Latinx lives matter, and yes, white lives matter. Not just as much as we think they do, because they've been propped up. That's called privilege, okay? So we're going through the process of equity. Equity is the process. Equality is the outcome, but ultimately the true goal is liberation. Because if we're liberated, none of that matters. George, you just get to be George. Deon, you just get to be Deon. David just gets to be David. And I think that's all we want. We just want to be our genuine selves with nothing else held against us.
That's the truth, they say, and the truth sets you free.
Absolutely.
Wow, Dr. Fakunle, thank you so much for your time today, taking the time out of your busy schedule to meet with us for this interview. We really appreciate it. What I'm going to do now is end the recording of the interview, and if you could just stay on for a little bit for just one follow-up question before we conclude.
Okay, no problem.